He's no stranger to spreadsheets or soul work. From Air Force budget analyst to higher ed leader and trusted consultant, Dr. Roger Bingham has spent nearly 3 decades shaping students into leaders worth following. In this episode, we dig into what it means to lead without fluff, how servant leadership actually plays out in the real world, and why coaching and not correcting is the greatest gift we can give the next generation. If you care about calling people up and not just calling them out, this one's for you. Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. I believe work shouldn't be a four-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together. Well, welcome back, everyone, to a fresh episode of Cultivate. And today, I am so pumped to welcome an intentional, boots on the ground leader who brings just power to the classroom. And you'll see what that means. Dr. Roger Bingham, Associate Professor at Liberty University. I am thrilled to have you join the Cultivate Experience today.
It is a great honor to be with you today, Wendy. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Wow, Roger, our green room time started months ago when we connected over a magazine article, and I came to your office to figure out that someone who I didn't know shared so much in common with. And I just want the audience to be able to get that flavor and dive right in to what that looks like and where we found commonality. You know, Roger, every leader has a why. And anyone who engages with me knows that's where I go first.
Right.
So let's start off there with you. When you think back to your own career early in the days of retail, we have that in common as well.
Right.
Budget analysis in the Air Force. What leadership lessons did you carry forward from those spaces into the classroom and how you're leading today?
Really, yeah, I'd be happy to share that information with you. So, every time you have an opportunity to be led, you have an opportunity to have either an exceptional boss or a less than exceptional boss. And I've had all of those, right?
Yes.
Certain situations that I've worked in. I can recall one time working for the Air Force when I was in civil service. I had a boss that was decent enough in day to day, but I remember being pulled aside one day by a coworker who said, "Hey, Roger, there's another coworker that's talking to the boss. He has this other coworker has the boss's ear, and you need to be careful of what's being said about you. And you need to be careful about how you're actually acting to either reinforce those things that this person's saying or to not reinforce those." And so it's lessons like that, right? Long before I even stepped into leadership roles, where I guess my leadership journey is formed, or was formed in the part of that process. I was blessed to be a supervisor as a college senior. I was a student custodian at the University of Dayton. And so I remember Annie, my boss, coming to me that junior year saying, "We're opening up an off-campus location. Would you be willing to be the student custodial lead there?" And I thought, wow, that would be a great opportunity. And so that was, I guess, honestly, the first real leadership experience. So, it's those kinds of things, right? Annie was one of those amazing, so calm and so gentle, but so very effective. And so that is just, another example of one of those folks where they were so impactful to me. And at the time, you don't even know it, right? Again, I'll never forget an exercise that we did as part of that custodial team. This was not even a leadership item, but we walked around with a piece of paper on our back among a group of people, and they wrote things on that piece of paper about us, things that they had observed, things that, in coaching, encouraging kinds of things. And I'll never forget, one of those comments was, "You have more impact on people than you will ever realize." And I went, wow, I'm getting chills again, right? Just remembering this from more than 40 years ago. That comment has stuck with me. So, we are an accumulation of, past experiences, people in our past, our present, obviously, that so impacts our future. So those are a few of the things that I, think back to say, I didn't know it then, but these were elements of a leadership journey.
Well, and oh gosh, like you said, just jaw-dropping moments when we think about what that comment written on your back. First of all, we all need to incorporate the papers on the back of our backs. Like that, what an experiment to put in place uh, in our current space. You'll never know how much impact you actually are going to have.
Right.
Where you are now is not just about today and who you're interacting with and how you are influencing, because we know that's what leadership is.
Right.
You made that point right up front. We're going to learn what to do and what not to do.
Hmm.
There's always that opportunity to be able to glean from the experiences that we're having and then turn around and we have then the choice. What do we do with it? And how do we use that influence?
Absolutely.
I really appreciate how you painted that picture for us right up front because everyone knows, and including you and I having this conversation, when it comes to the Cultivate experience, there is that core belief relational leadership is
Hmm.
grounded in being as self aware and authentic as we can be. Who's showing up in the room and
Right.
how are we showing up? You've spent nearly 30 years shaping leaders in higher education. You're coaching the coaches, like that's the leaders that are coming. What keeps you energized to continue that investment in the next generation?
I think part of this, as a business person, right? I teach in the business realm. I'm a business professor, and so in business, it's always good when we can be additive, right? We add a
Mm,
customer, we add income. I look at that a little differently, I think, and I'm much more from a multiplier kind of effect, right? And so I'll never forget when I was moving from education administration. I've been almost 30 years now in higher education. First half of that, roughly a little over half, were education administration. And so when I was making this shift to the classroom, or thinking about it anyway, interview process, I remember my wife saying, "Roger, you're stepping from a senior leadership position in the community college system to someone who will be the lowest man on the totem pole, right? You're giving up all of this experience. I was leading a team of 50 people, not
yeah.
insignificant, right? And
No.
a lot of responsibility that came with that. So she said, are you prepared, to be the little guy? And I talk to my students about this generally as the first day of introduction. I didn't really understand the concept then as I was trying to tell her what I was thinking, but I understand it now, significance over success. And
Yes.
so what she was seeing was me giving up a very successful career in a way, right? Making good money, incredible benefits in the community college system in Indiana. And I was losing, about 50%. When I looked at my pay and benefits package, I was giving up about 50% of that. And so, interestingly enough, she wasn't worried about the money. I wasn't worried about the money, but she was asking the question, are you prepared to step down? And I said, Lorraine, if this goes well, I'm not impacting 50 people. I'm not impacting, the number of people, right? This additive, all right, we're going to grow our team by a person or two. I'm ultimately going to be impacting thousands of students. And those people will be impacting thousands of people in their life, right? So suddenly this multiplier alarm is going off in my head going, I like this. And that's really where the energy comes from, right? I love hanging out with younger people anyway, let's be honest, right? They keep me
Yeah.
young.
Yeah.
Um, the gray hair has wisdom. I'm doing that now, right? But hopefully I'm bringing that wisdom, that experience and that enthusiasm to the classroom and encouraging them to think about, again, leadership and influence, right? The words that I merge together, you do the same. What
Yes.
is what is your why, right? Where is your leadership going to make a difference? And so, few of us get to raise up the next generation in such large quantity, right? If I'm an employer, I might have a couple of new young people that come in each year to my office. Again, I'm talking to 500 a year every school year, and most of them are unique to me, right? I don't have often get the same people over and over again in my classes. So that's a long answer to a short question, but that is it, right? It's this opportunity to impact the future in a way that few of us would ever get to do that.
Well, and gosh, that exponential
Mm,
factor that you brought out, right? And not just having this small or narrow thinking of, well, I've got these few and who are in front of me, and everyone matters. But when you were able to early in your career take a look, and I've heard that, I've experienced the whole significance
mhm.
over success. Now,
Right.
I heard that for the first time really, and it hit me when I was in the nonprofit sector. And I had
Ah,
my first major gift placed in my hand. And I'm just going to say more zeros than I had ever seen. And the supporter looked at me and said, Wendy, you've given me an opportunity for significance. I've experienced success, but now you're giving me opportunity to experience significance in my success with with this ask, with this invitation to be a part of something that'll be well beyond me. And so when you just said that, it took me right back into that space, and that same excitement that you just spoke of,
yes.
knowing that you've got 500 students a year who you're going to be able to influence, and then who they're going to be able to influence. That's the same excitement and push that I felt during that point in time. And as we're talking about now, it's the same thing that we have in front of us when we have an opportunity to be able to influence and speak into the emerging leaders that are coming up. Because let's be very honest, what we're doing today important, but if it just stayed with us, no,
Yeah.
that would be heartbreaking, right? It's what do we do with it and how do we move forward? And when I think about the way you and I have had conversation, and I know this is going to come out here, there's no fluff. There's no
No,
fluff about what you do,
none.
Roger. The way you
No.
speak it out, our conversations, it really is in that coaching, that leadership, that influence. It's about moving forward, paying
Right.
it forward,
Right.
moving forward. The workshop that you and I worked on together, the focus was leader as coach.
Right.
How do you personally define that role? I know we have had conversation for the audience. How does it differ from the traditional manager or even mentor when we start
Really.
talking about a leader as a coach?
Yeah. So when I look at that, it's a complicated question, right? And it sort of lives out maybe more simply than it does in answering the question. I distinguish again personally, and obviously with my classes, the difference between manager and leader. So that's the starting point, I think, for answering your question. A manager
Yes.
is an appointed position. They have rights and responsibilities as part of that appointed position, right? You've got a place on the organization chart. My name is there, Roger. I'm the manager of this department. And I try to do this very simple, right? I live sort of a bumper sticker mentality in so much of this. My one word association with management is task. It's about getting the
Yes.
job done. And
Mm-hmm.
it's no more than that, right? At its core, it's no more than that. Sometimes that's getting the task done, right? It's all about pleasing the customer, but it doesn't always take care of the employee in the process. So I'm sorry that your kid's ball game is tonight. We've got this overtime,
Mm,
and the job has to get done because the customer is first. They have to be pleased. The shift for me then is to leadership. Leadership is about influence, and so yeah, I'm the leader in my classroom. Right, students have to do certain things to get a certain grade and those kinds of things. But for me, it's much more about how can I share with them what I've experienced, what other people have experienced, what can I create inside of them to be hungry to learn more about something, right? How do I hit that intrinsic motivation button, or how do I use an extrinsic motivation tool to actually then influence, right, the leadership piece to influence them to seek more and do more, right, to maybe internalize that external stimulus at that time. And so again, it's that's where this is for me, right? So to me, and a mentor, you asked about that as well. A mentor, in my experience, has been more about, and I have had the great honor of mentoring some young men over the years. I have some now that I work with, but much of that is let's catch up,
mm-hmm.
which I'm good with, right? We need to engage in that to build trust and build that. And then it's about, okay, I have a problem and I need your help in solving that problem, right? Coaching is different than that. So there is the trust building piece, there's the relationship piece, getting to know you. There is the, hey, I've got an issue that I need some help with, but there's also, let's not just solve today's problem. right? Let's move beyond. So that mentor, if you're doing it well, is thinking ahead, is
Hmm.
not only reacting to what's happening in the moment, but thinking about, okay, what advice can I give you that helps you now, but also prepares you, future proofing, right? I don't know if maybe that's too strong a term, but it's this concept of moving beyond. Well, maybe not even moving beyond, but combining, elements of management, elements, because you've got to get the task done, right? They have an issue. It's elements of
Yes.
mentorship where you're building relationship, but it's that next level, right? It's additional core elements that really help that individual now and in the future. Because if I leave someone um, from a management perspective, so be it, right? We're done. The relationship probably is done. If I leave someone from a mentor relationship, hopefully they're better, you know. But if I leave someone from a coaching kind of thing, I want there to be a gap in their life, right? I want to have
Yes.
been contributing at such a level that, wow, I missed this relationship, right? I was gaining so much from that, things I didn't even understand at the time, that, wow, now it's like, okay, I really want to get reconnected with this individual, because it was so impactful. So again, those are the elements that I would weave together, to help look at the difference between manager, mentor, and then ultimately coach.
Well, and you're a business guy, you're a numbers guy, so you just gave us an equation. And
Yeah.
I'm just going to say you also weave this beautiful tapestry. Like that picture of what each of those look like and how they actually intertwine,
Mm.
right? At its foundation, each one of those steps at different increments, there's trust. Because even in managing those tasks, I'm not going to do anything for anyone. I mean, we can just check boxes, but how
Right.
long is that going to actually last? Even in getting the task done and finishing it well, if I don't trust that you are for me, even
Right.
from a man, right? And so each one of those, I think that's where we see is the depth of trust. And like you said, there's a hole that's there if a coach steps out of.
Mhm.
It's also the place where then you see that person see themselves as a coach and
Right.
are looking to then pour in, right? That exponential outpouring of. I'm curious, you're speaking this out, obviously, to number of students. What changes are you seeing in the students and those interactions on how they're defining and what they're seeking out for leadership?
Yeah, and again, it's difficult to tell at times, right? Because you don't always get that feedback from students.
Yeah.
But I will reflect back to a student at my previous institution. We had an opportunity to. There was a local businessman who provided, landscaping products and those kinds of things. And he had many, many acres of property. And we said, wouldn't it be really cool to develop a 5K obstacle course? And so he had a peat bog on the property, and he had this great, great big dirt mound that we put a tarp on and washed people down with water out of his water truck. And so I had some students that were working with me on this, and they were students at that institution at the time. And so I was talking to one of those, Georgie, young lady, and we were talking about a challenge that she was facing at work. And so again, we were, light mentoring, I would say at that point, right? Probably not at the coaching level, at least from my perspective.
Hmm.
And she said this, and it just rattled my cage in one of those moments where it's like, wow, you don't even realize your impact, right? And she said, Dr. Bingham, she said, I was having this conversation with a colleague and I heard your words come out of my mouth. I'm like, I hope they were good words, right?
Yes.
I really hope they were the best things.
In that moment, you're like, oh,
What did I say?
what did I
What
say?
did I say? And I honestly don't even remember the particulars of that now, but it was one of those moments where it's like, I know, right? I know that I'm making a difference. And
Yes.
students are internalizing this, and they're now not only keeping it, but now they're sharing it. Multiplication, right? And
Yes.
so I jokingly talk to people my age or maybe a little younger when I talk about this multiplying. And you remember the old Breck commercials, Breck hairspray, right? I told two friends, and they told two friends, and they told two friends, and so. But that's the kind of thing that I see, right? I've talked with a lot of students, who come to my office. I think of one young lady in the spring semester, and her father was running a business. It was a fast food restaurant, and just many of their systems were broken. And
Mm,
so we would talk, and then she would go back and have that conversation with her dad. And, some of the information was useful. And so she was transferring that over to him. And so, there are moments like that. And it's very affirming. You get occasional, not a lot, but an occasional thank you note at the end of the school year. And again, I think of one that came from one of our graduate student assistants. So she finished up her MBA, master's degree, in May. And it just was such a touching. She'd been one of my undergrad students. And I don't teach MBA classes, so I didn't have her there,
mm,
but she was my GSA and she was working with me. And she said it was just so cool to see the things that you talk about in class that you're actually living out with people that work for you. And I'm like, oh, this is so, again, you and I have talked about this very thing, these affirmations that come in that show you, right, that you're in God's perfect and pleasing will, not his permissive will, right? We do
yeah.
that a lot, but that you're in that perfect spot, of where you are, right? That your calling and your actions to follow that calling are just, overlaid, right? They are just in that perfect spot.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so those are the kinds of
There's
things.
no disconnect there, right? It's all
Absolutely.
intentional and purposeful. I love and you took me back. Like you threw me back in when you started talking about students who I heard my voice. I heard your voice come out my mouth, and you're like,
Right.
"Oh, what did I say?" 17 years that I served in lay youth ministry,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of things that were said, and right, and a lot of life
Mhm.
that was lived. And when you get that Facebook Messenger, Instagram message that says, "I really appreciate," and this is a decade plus later,
Right.
how you poured in and you stayed the course and it finishes and I wasn't easy, right? And so now
And they
there's this
know.
self-awareness and they're realizing and they're moms now, like they're doing
Right.
that thing. And
Right.
you're like, gosh, you see the exponential space.
Mhm.
And something you said just a little earlier, you may never hear, we may never hear, but we've got to
Right.
stay the course that we've been put on, right? That
Absolutely.
calling that we've had, that's our responsibility. That's what we're going to have to answer to and for. But man, to be able to get those glimpses, and I think that that's it. There are glimpses and they are gifts to say,
Yes.
yeah, what I am doing is well beyond me and how I walk it out, how you were called up into that
Mhm.
space. Hey, I see you walking the talk. And that's something in leadership and as we're in this influencing space, we have to be so cognizant of, we have to be so intentional in is that we've got to walk that talk. It cannot
Absolutely.
just be that the words that we're saying. One of those places of walking the talk, and you and we've talked about this, compassionate accountability. That's the term that I utilize
Mhm.
with the clients that I'm working with and as I coach and lead out. And that's that high challenge and high support,
Right.
right? What does that, I mean, that's a tough space to be in, especially you're looking at emerging leaders, these young
Mhm.
leaders that you're talking about. What do you see and how are you speaking this out with the students of
Right.
the cost when leaders avoid the and try to lead one way or the other when they don't
Yeah.
sit in the high challenge and high support? What are you
Right.
seeing as the cost?
Well, again, I do share that very fact with my students. And again, you noted that we've talked about this. When I introduce myself at the beginning of the school year, I tell them my method of teaching, a methodology perhaps of teaching, is this I use the term high expectation, high support. So I'm
Yep.
going to ask a lot of you, but I'm going to do everything I can to help you. And I will say these words: I am not a weed out teacher. I do not subscribe to that mentality. I don't believe in it, and I don't
Mm,
support people who do.
yeah.
Right? There are college professors I know, who are of the mentality that you have to be good enough, essentially, right? And so, um, just not going to happen with me. And I go back to my college days when that was offered. This information was offered to me, again, formative. Right? I didn't even know or understand now, and now I'm espousing this: that if you have high expectations of people, but you don't offer high support, you wear your people out, right? You
Yes.
kill them as part of the
Yes.
process. If you offer high support but no real expectations, then it's this cushy job or not really a job at all. And what I share with students is, imagine being in a classroom where you have no assignments, no expectations of you, what's your incentive to be there,
Yeah.
right? Well, what's your interest level? And I say, if you were moving as you move from college to work, what if you had a job that just really felt meaningless to you, right? There was no expectations of you. It's going to feel good for a little while, right? Some of you will be a day maybe, and it's like, I got to have something to do here, right? Others of you might last a week, and those that are really out there might last the month of, I can sit here and do whatever I want. But at some point, it's just going to, the lack of wearing you down will wear you down, right? The lack of expectations, the lack of support. So it's just this, these sort of dovetailed pieces, right? I go back on some
Mm,
working terminology here. These things that just have to fit together
yes.
when they don't, right? If I'm building a dresser and I just nail the back of the drawers on, over a period of time, I'm going to yank on those drawers enough that the back is just going to fall off, right? And so this concept of dovetailing, it builds something that's almost indestructible. I mean, to actually destroy that drawer, common use, even sometimes abusive use of that. I jerk it open, I slam it shut. That's not going to wear that out. I physically would have to take it out and try to damage that, right? So high expectations, high support. To me, it's just a very natural fit. And again, trying to share that with students, saying they must go together. They absolutely have to go together. So hopefully, I got around to answering your question.
You did
Part of that.
absolutely. You and again brought it out in such a way that I think we can wrestle with it. Nothing that we're talking about today stays here, and so where we all are in our places and spaces of influence, you go, how am? Let's take that analysis. Where
Mhm.
am I in that space? Am I
Right.
leaning one way more than the other? And
Mhm.
we all can answer this question. We're looking for meaning. I mean, that's one of the big questions. What's the meaning of life? Right? Like we
Right.
we talk about that space. We're all looking for where am I connected and where what I'm doing actually makes a difference.
Right.
And so, like you said, if it's just this open ended, come if you want, do what you want, then
Mhm.
and we know this again. I'm going to lean into my nonprofit world and life. We talk about the mission and how massive and God-sized these missions are, and life changing, global changing. Well, the same thing is happening in the corporate space. They're not just getting up every day, and corporate leaders are just like, yeah, we get it done, we don't get it done. They've got a mission as well, and they want and need for those who are coming alongside in partnership internally to be connected to that mission. How do you keep people connected? Well, they've got to have that. They got to know they're invested in, and
Right.
they have to have that nudge and that push too, to say, hey, here's a challenge, and yes, you're not doing it alone. So yeah, I think you spell that out really, really well. And that's just a place in a space that we can't let go of. And we do have to do that analysis. Don't take our hands off the wheel and say, hey, I've got
Um,
this one checked. You mentioned some things, and I like to call them micro moments, things that we sometimes can unfortunately overlook, but shouldn't. As an educator, you're also in that consulting space and they've done that.
right.
Where do you see the greatest opportunity for what I call moments of leadership? Those small, everyday nudges that actually shape someone's trajectory. You've talked about some personal ones. How do you
Right.
make that real for your students?
Um, I think part of that for me um, is doing it consistently.
Mm,
Right. So this concept of consistency builds trust. So in the classroom, I'm the same teacher regardless of the day, right? And that's maybe, to use your terminology, a bunch of micro moments that are linked together in a macro moment, right?
yep.
And
Yep.
so I tell everybody here, in addition to what I hope is being known for excellent teaching and care and concern for students, I tell dad jokes and I wear fun socks, right? And so some of these micro moments for me is this ability to connect. All right. What I tell students, if I can get you to laugh, I can make a learning connection through that. Right. If you see me as a human, but a caring and concerned human that wants to have fun while I'm working, right? Not instead of, but fun while I'm working. That's sort of the whole sock moment, right? Is that,
Yes.
and I had students just yesterday saying, "Hey, Dr. Bingham, what socks do you have on today?" Right? And so it's these um, I love the terminology, right? These itty bitty kinds of things, where we connect, and so that consistency for me is so much of that, right? So those micro moments are always, along the same vein or the same path. And I'll ask students, how many of you have ever worked, and by show of hands, how many have ever worked for a boss that inhabits the same body, but it's a different person every day they come to work, right? And so maybe Monday it's happy boss, right? And Tuesday it's sad boss, and Wednesday it's grumpy boss, and Thursday it's moody boss, and Friday it's boss. Pick your. And I'm like, how many of you enjoy working for those people? And they don't. They absolutely hate
No.
it, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's these you know touch points, maybe is another term, right? Where I'm connecting with, in this case, obviously students, right? And when I was in the program chair position here, connecting with my team, to build that trust. And I think it's incumbent upon us as leaders to be the one who creates those micro moments, right?
Yes.
So many
Yes.
times they, as you say, they just get missed out of routineness or whatever. But sometimes they get missed because nobody's making an effort to make that connection or that micro opportunity. And so, for me, it was MBWA, right? Management by walking around. That's something we talked about when I was in school. And so, hey, Chuck, how are you doing today? Right? Hey, I remember that your mom was in the hospital. What's going on there? Right? And so, how is she? It's these connection points, and being consistent with that. If I do that once a year, meaningless, right? But if I'm checking in periodically anyway, but more often, making those micro connections at times when there is a crisis or at a time when there's a need, or hey, I just saw this in the news about you. Let's celebrate, right? I'm going to call the team together and we're going to have a quick huddle and say, you just were selected as employee of the year, teacher of the year, right? Let's talk about that. So those are the kinds of things that I'm trying to encourage students to look for, but also trying to reinforce by my own behavior as well.
And to your point, and I love this, for them then to turn around and walk it out, right? For them to pick that
Yes.
up and recognize this is something that I need to take with me and I need to do. You said one of my favorite words, and that is consistency, right? And you and I also share this in common. I just learned this just now, and that's our footwear. For you, it's socks. For me, it's shoes. And people looked at Wendy, what shoes are you wearing today?
Yeah,
Like, oh, how much
exactly.
fun are we having? How bright are
Right.
they? Right. But they're looking for, and when it doesn't happen, and again, it then it's is something off?
Right.
What's happening? What's
Right.
going on there? It's a point of conversation. It's a point of connectivity. It's something they can count on. And trust me, as you mentioned, the where are we? Which boss are we? I've experienced that. I don't say
Yeah.
this proudly. At a point in time, I was that boss. Now, life
Mm.
was happening, a lot of life, but that
Right.
was feedback that I had to receive as a gift, although a hard pill to swallow when one of my teammates said, we didn't know who was showing up on the screen. And
Right.
again, there was a reason behind it and a lot of hard life, but it spoke in deeply how intentional we have to be in that space and self-aware to say, you know what? I may not be the best leader for this team right now because of what's happening, because
Right.
consistency, like you said, builds that trust. And when that's if that's eroded, whew, we're in big trouble.
You've got
And
nothing
so
else.
you got nothing.
You've got
You
nothing.
really don't.
I firmly believe without trust, you have nothing.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, as believers, we have, God is our foundation, right? But in working with non-believers, they don't have the same biblical foundation, right? The same spiritual foundation. So that starting point with them is that level of trust.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It is a it's a common factor for all of us as
Mhm.
humans. That's what we're looking for. We could step into a whole nother episode, and I can't believe that we've got to wind up our time because we've just gone into so much depth. Like I said, for us to chew over, but not to leave here. But I'd
Right.
be remiss if I didn't wrap up with this. We're talking about these things that we're working on today that we've got to be consistent in how we're influencing. Let's talk a little future. What leadership competencies do you think that overall in the leadership influence space that we're underestimating right now and that you are emphasizing with your students, they
Mhm.
have got to pay attention to, they've got to hone, they've got to take with them? What are
right?
the things that you would say that you'd leave us charged
Hmm.
to really hold on to?
Well, I tell my students that leadership success depends on many, many factors, right?
Yes.
But there are three that I think are absolutely massive for success. And maybe it's more of the lack of these creates a grand opportunity for harm to success, right? There's so a lot of things that are probably in between, some things that are really big, but I tell them you need to speak well. And
Mm,
so in all of my classes, students do presentations. You need to write well. Again, you can be discredited by a typo, right? I can remember reviewing
mm,
cover letters where someone would say, I have incredible attention to detail, and they'd have three typos in their cover letter. And then I say you need to team well, right? So you have to be able to get along. And that each of these, right, is enormous, ginormous, right? The verbal communication piece of that is huge. The written communication piece of that is huge. It's papers, it's research, it's emails, it's all of that. But perhaps the largest one for me is this team well. And so
yes.
you have to show up, right? You have to contribute. You have to contribute fairly equally. Even as a teammate, not even a leader, you still have to be in a place where you're creating psychological safe space for people, right? You don't someone makes a suggestion, you just don't beat them down, right? That doesn't create that. So there's just so many elements that EQ, right? This whole concept of
Yes.
emotional intelligence, that could be many episodes. So all of those pieces, but I summarize those, right? I try to categorize by speak well, write well, and team well. And so obviously through their 4 years here at Liberty and anywhere else that they can get good leadership and good management, again, drawing that distinction, I hope that what they're seeing is, good in those areas, right? Training in those areas, um, and a recognition of where those are not good, things that they would decide not to put in their toolbox, right?
That's right.
The tools in the toolbox analogy, but the but still learn from it, right? Learn that this is where I don't want to go. All right, I want to be that consistent leader. I don't want to be that they don't know who is showing up in that body on a given day. So again, leadership. What I love about leadership is I'm teaching skills that we really don't teach anywhere else. The greatest challenge of teaching leadership skills is you don't teach them anywhere else, right?
You don't.
Soft skills are some of the hardest skills to transfer to people, right? I can teach someone accounting. I can do debits and credits. I can do finance, and I can do economics or whatever, healthcare. But this nuanced environment that I live in provides an enormous challenge, but an enormous reward as well, right? And I know you have lived that, and you are living that.
Yeah.
Part of the whole purpose of what you're doing through these podcasts is to say, let's take some good and see where that can be multiplied. So again, I admire
Absolutely.
you and appreciate you for this
Well,
effort.
it doesn't happen if not for guests like yourself who are willing to come on and add your piece, add your component and affirm these truths. That's what makes it work. And so appreciate, I never want to wrap up an episode without giving the audience a little bit of a fun look into who's on the other side of that screen from them. And so
Right.
a couple of rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
You got a lot of things that are happening, a lot of things that are going on in professional, personal. After a long day, full week, what's your favorite way to reset?
I'm with my wife. So that is absolutely, she's had some medical challenges this summer. And so we haven't been outdoors as much. But we absolutely love getting outside. So, hiking the trails, the Sunflower Festival, a favorite restaurant in Roanoke, any of those kinds of things, right? Where we can just get out and enjoy. I have this amazing view out my office window of Sharp Top, and just
Wow.
sort of yearning for, wow, I'm not sure I want to walk that today, but just getting out and enjoying that. So that's it for me is, time with her. And of course, my family as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I love people. Hopefully that's obvious through our conversation today. I absolutely love people. But I love my family, just an amazing amount. So time with them is key. And at this place in life, time with my wife is even more precious, right? And I don't mean to imply that she's in a life-threatening situation, right, by that comment, but just it's good. It's just so
Yeah.
good.
No, and such a great reminder in all the depths that we're talking about and all the outpouring that we're doing and pouring into others. We
Mm-hmm.
can't forget those that are the closest to us, right?
Right.
And in the work that we're doing. So I love that. If you had to pick a genre of music that best fits your personality, what would that be?
Oh wow, that is a great question. I love that you're throwing these out here. Um, I think I listen to a lot of contemporary Christian music, and it's the message of the music, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And some of that is maybe a little too commercial, a little too polished, or whatever. But there's so many times I hear something, and it's not. I mean, I hear people calling the radio stations and say, this music touched me at this moment. And I don't know that I've ever had that kind of experience, but what I have had is, just humming a song, right? And it's like, it's so much more, it's richer to me when it has that, faith-based message in it, right?
Yeah.
That, the one of the lines from a song that I'm hearing right now on the radio is, I'm dancing on the grave that I once lived in, right?
Ooh.
Just talking about our faith. And it's so, part of that, it both I guess excites me, and represents what I hope I'm giving to students, right? As a
Yeah.
believer, sharing that hope as well, right? That eternal look. I mean, we talk about helping people grow, but I'm also hoping I can share a glimpse of eternity with people, right?
Yeah.
That's part
Yeah.
of what we do here, professionally. I mean, as a part of our institution. But I want that, as part of both my personal and professional calling. To me, there's no separation, right? We talked
There's no.
briefly about calling earlier. So anyway, long answer to your question, but I would say that best represents me, would
Oh,
be the message in contemporary Christian music.
yeah, no, I think that makes so much sense. And again, goes back to that consistency space.
Mm.
That's who you are. So it would flow through. The audience would be upset with me if I didn't ask favorite ice cream flavor because we got to know.
Favorite ice cream flavor? I am a big fan of Neapolitan, right? So I get three flavors in one, friend. I
Take that
do.
full scoop.
I get all of it. But I also enjoy a toasted coconut now and then. There's a place in town here, who has some very rich, very deep flavors.
Yes.
And so that one, the banana chunk, right, a banana and chocolate element as well. So I'm not a one flavor only kind of guy, right? I'm checking these different ones out periodically, but I am fairly consistent within my flavor band.
And if that didn't wrap up Roger Bingham right there you guys go. There you go. Roger, you stretched our thinking. You filled our cups. You know what? With inspiration, and you said it right there at the end with hope. The things that you spoke about today and how you're walking that out with your students, how you're walking that out within your family, what you've left us with today, that's that space and peace that we all need in our influence and our leadership. And I can't say thank you enough for sharing not just your story, but you've got a personal mission statement about empowering students to envision limitless futures, planting seeds of purpose that ripple far beyond the classroom into lasting, eternal impact. Wow. Let that sit and just I can't appreciate you enough for bringing this to us and sharing this with us and pushing us to do better.
Well, thank you, Wendy. It's a great honor and pleasure to be with you today. Look forward to other opportunities that we have to connect as well.
Absolutely. Can't wait. And again, locally right here in my backyard. So I love that just to know that this is how my community is being influenced. Well, Cultivate collaborators, that's a wrap today, but it's never truly over because each of us brings our own special flavor to the mix of relational leadership. So until next time, let's keep stirring things up. Let's keep making an impact and being better together. Thanks, everyone. Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivateforgood.com.